100 years ago, that's not true, but like 3-4 years ago, I did a video, maybe 5 years ago. It was a long time ago. Long time ago. I did a video basically like mistakes that indie brand does. And I did this in collaboration with Amy from Amy Loves Makeup. And I rewatched those videos plus Karen Harris video, which she also was inspired by our videos, where we were talking about different mistakes that indie brands does. And I wanted to come back. I don't know how many years later, but I want to come back and I want to like revisit this subject again. I want to talk about it again, and maybe through a different lens. A lot of things have happened since then. Oh my god, when I watched the video, I was just like, oh my god. I remember myself in that time. I feel like I talk with so much more confidence nowadays. I feel like I was trying to make myself smaller. I was trying to feel more confident, but you could tell that I was not 100% still confident in myself, in the space, and with everything that's going on. You watched that old video, or maybe not. For everyone's pleasure, maybe not, but that was just a different lifetime. But I wanted to readdress these points again, and also again through a different lens. A lot of things have happened since then. A lot of indie brands have come, a lot of indie brands have gone, and also since then I started my own indie brand. My indie brand is Cinch Beauty, is now 2 years old. Oh my god, is that true? Time really does fly. And I'm not saying I'm an expert, definitely not. I will for sure. Ask me again in 5 years. Oh my god, I would have made so many mistakes and I would have learned so many things. But I want to talk about a couple of things that I have seen from indie brands, especially now since I filmed that video. We started to see some indie brands disappearing, closing their doors, silently fading into the night, never to be seen again. Popular ones that used to be super popular are maybe not as popular anymore. And I just wanted to talk about it again. What mistakes do I see indie brands do then, now, maybe in the future? And again, not an expert. These are just things based on, again, my experience from reviewing indie brands for 10 years. That's how I started here on YouTube. Also from running an indie brand for 2 years, knowing a lot of indie brand owners, and also seeing your comments and your reactions to indie brands, to their releases, to their customer service, and also, of course, seeing what brands are popular versus which brands are not as much. There's going to be no particular order. I wrote a list of the things that I think about a lot, and there's going to be no particular order. Maybe I'll save not the juiciest one, but like my favorite one, the one that I think about a lot, that I don't think other people maybe think about a lot. I'll save that one towards the end. The first one I want to talk about, and I find this one fascinating, and that is bad product photography. You don't even need to hire a photographer. With my brand, I do have a photographer that I hire. I actually contacted her I think as I just started working on Cinch Beauty, I contacted her and I was like, I love your work. I want to work with you when my brand launches. And that was like, I think like 10 months ahead of time, I contacted her and I was like, I want to work with you. Not everybody needs a professional photographer, but you do need some good product photography, because like if we can't even see what a product looks like, if your products are dark, there's too much, sometimes I think that the product shots should represent how your product looks in real life. But I think sometimes it's almost like it's not showing the product in its best light. It's kind of like, you're going to a special occasion, like dress up, look your best. And I feel sometimes I see product photography, I'm like, then I get the palette and I'm like, I really don't know if this photography is doing anyone any justice, to be honest. And I see that with a lot of brands, and I think that, and this is something that I'm probably going to be talking about again towards more the end of the video, but I feel like everybody starts somewhere. But I think with product photography, the thing that gets me is when I'm seeing like no improvement with time. And there are big brands as well that have like really, really bad product photography, where you look at the product photography and you're like, how are you expecting to sell anything with this kind of a picture? It makes your product look like a baked potato. Like, what are we doing right now? This also comes into swatches. I feel like brands, and I know that this is what we talked about before, that the problem before 5 years ago or whatever it was that brands were mainly doing swatches, brand owners were mainly doing swatches on their own skin tone, and you didn't really see a lot of skin tones being represented within the swatches. I feel like we are better with that nowadays, and I feel like there are some brands that either send it off to a product photographer, which is my favorite, or at least send it out to a diverse PR list so we can get some swatches that way. I will say though, I do not prefer sometimes, how do I say this with love? I think sometimes indie brands are not good at sourcing UGC, user-generated content. I feel like sometimes when brands, what they really want to pay a creator for swatches, they end up paying for sponsored content, when what they really wanted was to pay for swatches. Because if you are getting paid by a brand to do swatches, that picture is going to be on the brand's website. I don't think that there should be a creator's watermark on that. I will die on that hill. If you paid for them to do professional swatches for you to have on your website, I do not think that there should be a watermark for that creator on that picture. You paid for that picture. If you didn't pay for the picture, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to be honest with you, I don't think there should be a watermark on there because you paid to get that. Like with my photographer, that person also makes their own content, but I'm paying her to do all of these product photography and swatches for me. Why would I also like have her watermark on it? Like, I paid for the photography, I didn't pay for like her reach. And I think that this is one of the big problems I see sometimes with swatch pictures, because I've seen people get upset when creators share someone's swatch pictures to promote the launch for a brand, which is what the brand should want. You are paying for swatches so that other creators or people can see it to promote your launch, and then the creator gets upset that other people are showing their swatches even though they got paid for the swatches. And that's why I think that brands should be, first of all, writing contracts. Like, listen, we need more contracts in the beauty space, but I also think that it should be more clear. I am paying you for these swatches. What am I expecting in return? And I think that that has been a new problem that's risen in the beauty community, which I know for me and for some other creators, we have stopped using some brand swatches because it's just not worth the hassle, which in turn ends up being less promotion for that brand for their launch. So I do hope that in the future we can get even further with like our swatches so we can have less conflict in the space, because I don't think that that is what the brands want. This, I'm probably gonna get in trouble. I can already tell my DMs are gonna be burning after this. Don't be mad at me. The next thing is something that I thought about that I don't know if anyone else has thought about, but as a brand, you need to have a very clear idea of who you are and who you are not. And that also comes to price range. And I think if you think about a mainstream brand, Too Faced, ABH, Wet n Wild, Colourpop, you think of a specific price range. You don't think a Colourpop palette is going to be $70, and you don't think an ABH lip liner is going to be $5. You don't think a Wet n Wild blush is going to be $40, and then all of a sudden they're releasing a $10 lipstick. You don't expect that. And I think that sometimes with indie brands, sometimes it is lacking this overall just overview of the brand, of like what kind of a brand are we? Because just because you're an indie brand doesn't mean that you are not in a specific price range. You can be a budget indie brand, you can be a luxe indie brand. There are more affordable indie brands, there are more expensive indie brands, there are mid-ranged indie brands, where my brand, for example, I see myself more as a mid-ranged indie brand. And I think that sometimes with pricing, I think that brands are losing sight of like the inconsistency is giving unrealistic expectations of some things. If you are having a blush palette for $90 and then all of a sudden you're having a lip gloss for $15, it's giving unrealistic expectations of both of those products. And I really think that that should be streamlined a little bit. And I think that sometimes brands, they just want to release their perfect products and they're just looking for the margins for that specific product, and they end up pricing it in a way that doesn't make sense for the brand, which just makes the brand seem a little bit chaotic. And that's something that I've seen a lot as of late, and I've actually seen some people comment on it as well. And I do think that overall brands needs to streamline their entire brand all together, to be honest. Logo, packaging, website, pricing, marketing, Instagram feed, everything. You have to have a vision. You have to think about holistically, like the whole brand. And that's not something that just happens one day you wake up and you just start a brand and everything is just streamlined from the beginning. Nobody's doing that unless you have like a really big investor behind you. But I do hope that brands that have been in the industry for years and years and years, it surprises me sometimes when I see indie brands that have been going on for as long as I've been on YouTube and even longer, and I still feel like some of that holistic streamlining is just, I don't know, I want to say left the chat, but I'm not even sure if it ever entered the chat. And this also then comes into my next point when, again, everybody has to start somewhere, and not everybody has a budget to hire a professional to do a logo, a packaging, a website, whatever, all of those things, because nobody is good at everything. And when you start out a brand, not everybody has the same budget starting out. Some people, literally, I've heard people start out their indie brand with $500 and a dream, and they've grown it into something bigger. And then some people have a budget going in and they're able to streamline things a little bit more from the beginning. But the thing that I don't understand is when indie brands have been going on for a really long time and they still have the packaging that they did in Canva. They still have that logo that they did in Paint 8 years ago. The website still looks like something you coded, like I coded back when I was like in high school. And I just like, at some point, some of the income has to be funneled into elevating the brand, making the brand look like it's successful and 8 years old. Like there has to be something to make even big brands as Apple has changed their logo throughout the year. Nobody, like I said, regardless of budget, is just perfect for forever. Everybody needs to streamline and elevate and get with the times and all of these things. And I feel like there are definitely indie brands that maybe this could be like a little bonus point, but they're marketing to the customers they're already having. And I feel like a lot of indie brands would really benefit from looking at their logo, their social media, their website, their packaging from a lens of, if I had never seen my brand before and I just randomly ended up on this website, what would be my impression? Would I think that this is a 10-year-old successful brand that had 10 years to build, streamline, and perfect their brand? Or would it still look like something that I started 6 months ago? And I think that some brands do have a little work to do there. And I mean, me too. Listen, my website is okay, but it's definitely not perfect. But we do need to keep it in the back of our heads. Like, how do we get better? The next one is a golden one, but this is something that I have realized myself the last couple of years, not only working with social media as a creator, but also starting my own brand. Some brands just refuse to ask for help. And you have to understand that as a brand owner, there's just no way that you'll be able to do everything, especially if you want to grow. Everybody is good at some things. Some people are good at marketing. Some people are good at product development. Some people are good at like the financial strategies. Some people, like, I am awful at taxes. So I don't do my taxes. I hire people to do my books and to do my taxes. I used to work 10 years as a waitress in Sweden. I thought I was great with customers, but Americans have a special way, something special they expect from like customer service in a more sugary, roundabout way, and I'm too blunt. So I hire someone to do my customer service because I don't want people to feel like I am being rude when I'm really just trying to be helpful. But I understand that the way that I speak is not the way that, I'm very blunt. I mean, you're here, you see the way that I am. And even though I'm here to help, I'm like, sometimes brand owners have a really hard time asking for help. And just thinking about how can you ask for help or hire help to do the things that you are not as good as, so you can get time to do the things you're actually good at, and also so that you can free up time for the things that is easy to do but is very time consuming. For me, for example, I don't have time to pack orders. it's not hard to pack orders, but I just do not have the time. So I have a warehouse that packs my orders. That means that my orders go out within 48 hours. I have extremely fast shipping. And sometimes you do have to dig into your profits and allocate some of that money into hiring help, because otherwise you are going to be one of those brands that takes 8 weeks to send out an order. You're going to be one of those brands that takes 2 weeks to answer customer service emails. You're going to be one of those brands that only posts 2 things on Instagram when you have a launch, because you simply do not have time to do all of those things. And that is going to give you a reputation that's really, really hard to get out of. And I do see a lot of brands, I don't want to say that you're penny pinching, but I do think that at some time you do have to think about, you can buy time with money, and with that time you might be able to make more money. But if you get caught in this, I'm going to do everything myself to save on personnel, you're going to be working 24/7 and you're still not going to be able to perfect all the things. And that's something that I realized myself. I could make more money if I did some of these things myself, but I wouldn't do it as good, I wouldn't do it as quickly, and I also wouldn't sleep. And sleeping is good, I've heard. So I've been told. The next one is a classic, and I did talk about this in my other one as well, and this one is really hard, and I've noticed this myself as well now that I have my own brand, and that is not taking things personally. I do appreciate when people give me constructive feedback. I have already gotten things into production as I'm filming this that is 100% based on constructive feedback that I have gotten. And I'm like, you know what? That is good feedback. I want to do something about that. And I am now developing products based on the feedback that I gotten. But not everyone is good at leaving feedback. And even there are people that are extremely rude. And there are people that, it's happened to me, it's happened to some of my friends, it's happened to brands that I see, that someone doesn't get the response that they want from customer service, so they will just go on social media and literally make up a story because they're upset that they're not getting their way. And this could be for a million different reasons, but you can't take it personally. And we have seen some indie brands really put their foot in their mouth, treating their social media like their baby. But also lately we have seen social media brands, I'm talking about JD Glow, an oldie but a goodie, maybe not a goodie anymore, and Ensley Rain, literally tanked their brands because they treated their business page as their personal Instagram. They started liking and commenting and following pages for personal interest, not realizing that this is your job. This is your business page and you need to be a professional, and you can't just treat your business page as your personal page. Again, what kind of brand do you want to be seen as? Is this just someone sitting in your kitchen doing lip glosses, or are you a professional page ready to grow? If you have views on personal views that people don't agree with, and eventually I'm sure they're going to come out anyways, and people might choose to not follow you anyways, regardless. But if you do it on your business page, that's just a recipe for disaster. Regardless, don't treat your business as your personal Discord page. Like, I've seen so many brands just overshare on their stories, and I'm just like, Jesus, call a friend. What are we doing? What are we doing? Please. And I see it and I cringe, and you get that like twitch in your eyelid, and you're like, oh, please get a Marco Polo like the rest of us. Next one I did talk about last time as well. This is something that I now have a fresh perspective on, owning my own brand. And I said before that I think that a mistake that InBrand does is that they are not diversifying their product categories, and they're only getting stuck in one thing. And especially brands, when they see that something is doing really well, just look at Glamlight. They've been doing so well at their franchise collabs, and they've been doing them just literally like 10 a year for a couple of years now, and they all contain the same variation of things: lip kit, eyeshadow palette, mirror, highlighter, lip scrub, kind of a set. Like, they all contain the exact same thing, and a makeup bag, because that's what works. But eventually if you don't diversify your product, you cannot, you will hit a plateau, and you might even go down because people, they want to see more. And how many eyeshadow palettes can one person own? And I know of brands that have told me that they're not doing as great as they used to, but also at the same time, they are releasing the exact same product as they have done again and again and again. And I'm just like, either you have to reach a new community, and how are you going to do that? That's going to be your strategy. How do you reach a new community? Because if you keep selling the same thing to the community you have, how many eyeshadow, like, nobody needs, I mean, I have a million eyeshadow palettes, but like a normal consumer, they're not gonna buy 7 palettes a year from a brand. So I do think that sometimes just because something has been working doesn't mean that it's always going to be working. And especially nowadays, and maybe this could be, it's like just again like a subgenre, too many releases. I think some brands were seeing extreme success with some launches, and they were thinking, oh, if we made X amount of money for 4 releases a year, we're gonna make X amount of money times 2 with 8 releases a year. But that's just not how things work, and people get fed up, and there's just too many releases, and people get jaded. And I think that some brands, instead of just making the releases that they had even better, they just started doing just more of them, more releases, more palettes, more highlighters. And for some brands, it has just been quite a lot of releases quite often. But here's where the insight comes in, because as a brand owner myself, I have noticed that certain product categories do render quite a lot more hype than others. For instance, an eyeshadow palette is always going to get people more excited than most other products, unless it's a product category that you're already known for. And that's just the name of the game. And that is the reason why a lot of people are releasing eyeshadow palettes. When you do a product, when you develop a product, when you release a product, you as a brand owner, me, I am paying for that product before I'm releasing it. So I have invested a big chunk of money, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars, into a product that I'm just crossing my fingers hoping will sell. And with an eyeshadow palette, you do get that money back much quicker. With another product like lip products, blushes, brushes, any kind of different products, and I've talked to other indie brands and they are saying this as well, those don't sell as quickly. So as a brand, you have to be okay with sitting on that inventory for a bit. And for some brands, they just cannot. They cannot afford to have a slow income of money, because they need that money for rent, for school, for food, for insurances, and they're not able to release something where they might not get a return on investment for 2 months, 3 months, because that money is not money that they just have laying around. So it's also one of those things where it comes back to, eventually you do have to make enough money to scale your brand a bit, to offer more kinds of products. And again, it is expensive to sit on stock, because that is money sitting on a shelf and you're just hoping it's gonna sell before it expires. So I definitely see where people are coming from. But I do think if you want to have longevity in this game, if you want to be a brand that's around another decade from now, I do think that every brand needs to diversify. I'm not saying that every brand needs everything. Not every brand needs to have foundation, not every brand needs to have a bronzer, but maybe you need to have more than 1 or 2 products. Maybe you need to have a couple of more products in your repertoire. And also, and now we're getting into the economics of things, but upselling is a big thing. And you probably know this as well. When you're buying something on a website, most people will go to a website to buy that big ticket item, that new palette. They might not go to the website to buy a new lipstick. But when they're at the site, they're much more probable to put something more affordable in their basket together with the eyeshadow palette. A blush, a lip liner, a brush, a makeup bag, a sponge, a highlighter, they're less likely to maybe buy 3 palettes, because that's 3 times as much money as they had thought of spending, but an extra $15, that they might. So as a brand, I do think that it's a good idea to have more than just expensive items on your website, to have something else as well. And also to have some things in stock. I know, again, that it is expensive to have things in stock, but I do think that, again, if you're trying to get in new customers, if there's a customer coming to your website that's never been there before, never bought anything from you before, and there's nothing in stock on your website, the chance of them coming back again that time that you restocked one item, I don't know. I don't know how high that is. I feel like I touched on a lot of different things in this video, but now I want to talk about the thing that I have noticed as of late, where I see sometimes brands doing great versus not doing great, and that comes for other brands as well, but especially with indie brands that are not available in retail spaces, in brick and mortar. And that is, and this is my favorite, this is my new favorite, not having a launch strategy when you're launching a new product. How are people supposed to know that you are launching something new if all you're doing is putting it up on your website, putting something on your stories, not sending out any PR, not letting at least let the Instagram news pages know, hey, I got a new launch. And I see sometimes brand owners showing on their personal pages what seems to be their big fall launch, like 2 weeks ahead of anybody else on the PR list getting it. And it's like, that's not the way to create hype for a launch. And again, this is maybe, again, goes back to asking someone for help. But if you feel like your launches are a little slow, maybe your launch strategy isn't the best. Maybe you need to try something else. I mean, it could be the product. People don't like the product. But it could also be that the launch is just not planned out whatsoever. And I mean, sometimes, oh my God, do you remember back in the day when Melt would like start sneak peeking their products a month ahead of launch? Ain't nobody got time for that. And I see brands do that now too. They will literally be like, look at this sample that I'm releasing next summer. Don't do that. Don't let your customers know about stuff like this until you are actually ready to reveal it, because you have a launch strategy. And I mean, just look at some of the bigger brands, the kind of strategies that they are doing when they are launching things. And you cannot have your owner of the brand revealing a product if they are not famous. Patrick Ta can reveal his products because Patrick Ta is famous. He can show his products on TikTok. But if you have a page with 1,000 followers and you're the one revealing the product, yeah, there's not going to be a lot of like hype around that launch, because remember, creators, we are striving to be as quick as possible with showing products. And I'm going to be honest with you, there is a lot of creators, me included, that if I get a product 2 weeks after it's been revealed on Instagram, I'm not going to do a dedicated video on it. I am not going to be like putting extra bells and whistles into that, because people have already seen it. The people that were interested in that launch, they've already seen swatches, they've already seen things. I'll include in something else. Several palettes, several looks, I do those kind of things. Maybe I'll do an Instagram reel. Maybe I'll like include it in a Get Ready With Me. I think that sometimes having a launch strategy, even if it is just sending it out to 2 creators. And I see some brands doing that, especially with like swatch pages, the pages that they really like swatches with. But again, if you're paying them to do swatches, remember to like have like some kind of contract of like, what are you expecting for the money that you are paying them, so that the launch strategy doesn't just include those 2 people or those 5 people sharing pictures, because nobody else dares to touch the pictures. But I do think that a lot of brands, because again, in 2015 all the way up to 2020, I would say just releasing a product was enough. People would buy it because people were so interested in makeup. There were so many few brands, there were so many more consumers, and makeup was on a high then that it isn't really right now. Competition is harsher and there are more brands available and there are more options to choose from, and people are seeing new makeup again and again and again. And if you don't have a launch strategy between your product, it's just gonna be one in the bunch. And there are products out there that deserve so much more hype than I think that they get, but they kind of just get lost in the shuffle because me, again, someone who literally my job is reviewing indie makeup, I realized that it's been revealed and released 2 weeks after, and I'm just like, I don't even know what happened. So that's just my personal thing, something that I see where it's like, is it a mistake that indie brands do? I do think that not thinking through your launch strategy, because again, you invested so much money into this, invested little time into thinking about a launch strategy as well. And if you don't know, if that's your weak spot, again, there is nothing wrong with hiring some help. Because again, you invested so much money in it. I would love to hear, what do you think are mistakes that indie brands do? Again, I come from a different perspective, I think. And maybe I am a little bit more brand focused. And this video is not to like pinpoint any brand or point fingers or say that everybody sucks, or even to say that I'm doing everything right. Listen, my launches have been chaotic, okay? I have been fighting for my life, struggling in the back, just trying to get everything to work. I know how hard it is, and I have help, and still I've barely been able to figure stuff out. So I'm definitely not coming here saying like, oh my god, I got everything figured out, because Lord knows I do not. And I would love again to come back another, I don't know what it was, 4 or 5 years later and just be like, I've learned more things. My sweet innocent summer child, little did I know about like how things actually work, which I think it's one of those things that I feel like I've gotten lost in our society altogether. It's the ability to come back and say, you know what? I've learned, I've grown, I've changed my mind, and this is now my point of view. So hopefully I'm able to do that in a while again. But again, I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you think are some mistakes that indie brand does? You really do not need to be name calling down in the comments. It's okay to be vague. We're trying to be respectful. But also let me know, do you have a favorite indie brand that you think that I should be reviewing that I haven't? I would love to hear about that as well. I do try to stay on top of things, but sometimes I fail. I hope you're having a great day. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave if you want to see more indie makeup, because I do review quite a lot of things. I'm wearing an indie look on my eyes today. I don't know if this video is live yet or not. If it is, I will leave a link to this look down below. As I'm filming this, it hasn't been revealed yet, so I'm trying to be a little bit mysterious again, because this brand has a launch strategy and it's a really good one. But I'll see you soon in a new video.